All right, welcome to Enabling High Quality Printing and Web Applications. My name is Craig Williams, and with me today is Tanu Hawk. And we'll start right away by talking about a few of the improvements in recent versions of ArcGIS, especially ArcGIS Enterprise. Here are the list of improvements we've made in 10.6. Those obviously carry on to newer versions, 10.7, 10.7.1, 10.8, etc. Number one thing you'll see is support for true color level transparency. You'll also see PDFs produced from vector features with transparency actually maintain vector. In layouts, you'll see Unicode support. You'll no longer see these ghost overlay items. Legend patches will be correct. And essentially, we're leveraging the output pipeline of ArcGIS Pro on the back end for print services now. So you'll see all these improvements. If you're using ArcGIS Enterprise 10.6 by itself, you'll want to install the ArcGIS Server 10.6 printing and script tool patch. If you're using 10.6.1 or later, you don't need that patch. Those improvements are already included. What's new in ArcGIS Enterprise 10.7.1 and ArcGIS Pro 2.4 and beyond? You can publish a print service to a standalone server from ArcGIS Pro. This was a bottleneck, especially for a lot of organizations who were using ArcGIS Online in cooperation with a standalone server inside, or on premises inside their physical organization building. There's also some other improvements. Only visible features and legends are shown from dynamic map services. That does require a 10.7.1 map service. We also can produce high DPI legends from services, and there's better integration of reports using arcpy. Tanu will cover a bit more of that later in the demonstrations. Other things that are new with this updated print service that came in at the 10.6 era is support for things like vector tiles. So we can render vector tiles on the print service and draw them with quite high quality. There's also support for smart mapping and things like the vector renderer for raster layers. This is image in Baja, California here, where you're seeing arrows. That's actually drawing from a raster data source. To work with the new features of this new 10.6 plus print service, you'll require the correct client APIs to work with these. For the most part, 10.6 was a bit in the past, so if you're up to date on newer versions of the JavaScript API, you'll already get these improvements. So you need 4.6 or 3.25 or higher. Web App Builder, ArcGIS Online, etc. are built on these API versions or newer ones and can take advantage of these capabilities. Okay, we'll dive right into print services. What's our goal here? High quality printing on the web. So those of you out there building web apps, you always get that one little requirement. I need a print button in my web application. And we hear from you, what are your primary goals? Well, most people, when they're talking about printing on the web, they're talking about actually producing a PDF in most cases. You want that document to be able to be printed at exact scale. Those of you who are from the GIS world will want to leverage ArcGIS Pro layouts. Along with that, you want to support large format plots, display all the contents of your web map. That includes services, graphics, feature layers, etc. Some of you have asked to be able to modify the map content during the process. For instance, add additional layers or swap out, say, a cached raster layer for vector content. You want to achieve those as well. And often with those requirements, you want to produce a high DPI print. So those of you who are producing really high quality output want to be able to render that at a high DPI. So what have we done to support these needs on the web? We've created a 3-tiered approach. So depending on what exactly you're looking for from this list, you'll choose one of these tiers of options. The first tier, tier 1, we just call this simple printing. This is to use the out-of-the-box geoprocessing service with ArcGIS Enterprise. This is pre-deployed with ArcGIS Enterprise. You just have to enable the service. And it supports small format printing, for instance, A4 or a letter page if you're in the United States. Synchronous printing, this is printing with a synchronous geoprocessing task where you're submitting the request and you're expecting the response to come back quickly. And it supports token-based secure services. So your standard ArcGIS token-based security is supported here. Tier 2 is a custom configuration. It's a lot like Tier 1, except you're supplying your own templates. You can optionally make the service asynchronous. And because you're supplying your own templates, you can support large format prints. Note that some large format prints may take a long time, so you might want to move to an asynchronous request if you're doing that, although there are some client concerns when you move to asynchronous requests. And then finally, Tier 3 is what we call advanced cases. Those are supported via arcpy.mp. arcpy.mp is the mapping module for ArcPy and ArcGIS Pro. And with this, you can support things like adding layers, changing your maps, replacing content. And you can do this in ArcGIS Pro 2.3 and higher, and ArcGIS Enterprise 10.7 and higher will support HTTPS security. All right, printing service overview. It's important to understand how this process works because it'll help you with your implementation of how this service comes to life. You publish your print service to a standalone ArcGIS server. The print services are powered by web maps. Web maps are a consistent format that's produced by all our APIs. It's just a JSON specification. But it allows for sharing of service endpoints, graphics, symbols, etc. An important note here is that the services in your web map must be accessible to the print service. So in a lot of cases, you'll be able to see some content perhaps inside of your web browser that the print service doesn't have authenticated ability for or is blocked by a firewall for. That will cause a problem when you go to the print service because the print service won't be able to connect to that data source. So keep that in mind with all the services that you're including in your web maps for printing, and this is something you need to pay attention to. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanu, who's going to demo the out-of-the-box print service.
Thanks, Craig. So when we work with GIS data, whether it's in a desktop application or web application, at some point we want to print, as Craig mentioned, right? So in the desktop application, just like our ArcGIS Pro, it's much easier. You go to you have a layout, you will go to the share and click print, and it prints for you to a plotter. It gets a little complicated when you run an application on the web browser, because if I use the browser print option, then it actually prints the whole page. But you just want to print that map itself, not that application with the all those controls and everything. So that's why when you use ArcGIS Online Map Viewer or your portal that you have that comes with ArcGIS Enterprise, it has this print option. So that's default option that you have. So let me click on this option called Map with Legends, and this time hopefully this will work fine. The last time it was there was some slowdown on our network. It was taking too long. Seems like that's taking too long right now. So that's why I already have that generated. So now it looks like this, right? So which is good. I got something at least right out of the box. I got my map and I got my legends on the left side, right? But there are cases like when you want to have a print on a large page format, or this example where I have a map service that's running on my machine, and in your case it could be within your firewall. The example that I had in my last demo, this is the service that is public, available in ArcGIS Online. Everyone can access this service. But this one, if I try it on a map viewer, let me add that. Okay, it draws fine. I knew that if I'm gonna submit a print task, it's gonna fail. I'll show you how I can see why it failed. So that's why I'm opening up my network tab, and I'll click my print option, and in few seconds you'll see that it fails. This is the request that went out, and I'm waiting for the response from the print service. And this is the print service that is actually available on ArcGIS Online. This is hosted and it's available for everyone to use. All right, I got my response back, and if you want to take a look at that, here is the parameter that passed to that print service. Craig talked to you about that in a second, and I'll be going into that in a brief moment too. And the response, if you look at the response, it says that it cannot create layer from that service at that point. So what's going on? Why did it fail? To do that, let me go back to my slide and show you how it works, right? So here is the case where I was working with my web application, and I was connected to my public map service, and then when I was ready, I actually submitted a task to that ArcGIS Online print service. ArcGIS Online print service can access the public map service, including the base map, right? And you can access that. It produces PDF, and PDF comes back to my web application. In the second scenario, my map service was running on my machine, in your case again within your firewall, and I can of course access that from my web application, and I can of course access all the ArcGIS Online base maps. Now when I submitted my task to ArcGIS Online print service, it tries to access my private map service and it fails. It doesn't have access, right? To fix that one, what we need is that we need to have our own print service running within our firewall. Okay. In this case, I can still access all my private and all the public map services, featured services, image services, everything. When the print task is submitted, it actually goes to my print service rather than ArcGIS Online, which can access all those services, produces PDF, and the result comes back. Okay. So in order to do that, how can I get one print service in for myself, right? So what happens when you install ArcGIS server, and this is, if you install a standalone server, then you go to the manager, and under utilities folder, you will see this printing tools, and it is in a stop mode. You have to start that, which I already did for the sake of time. When you install ArcGIS Enterprise with the portal and everything, this print service of course is there, it comes with it, and it's always started for you. Okay, now that I have my print service started, I can go to my REST endpoint of my server, and I see that under utilities folder, go back, it is the utilities folder. I have this printing tools, and it has two tasks. Okay, the one in the bottom, that's basically returns all the metadata about all the available layouts, like what is the size of the map frame inside it, does it have a title, does it have a legend, and does it have some custom text elements, right? And export web map task is the one that does all the job for you. It takes that gigantic web map JSON, and it converts that to map and produces the PDF for you. And you see that it has only 4 parameters. The first one is the web map at JSON. The next one is just the format, what format you want. The output be PDF, PNG, and it lists, the third one lists all the available layout templates, and the fourth one is just an output file. Okay. Now that I have it, how can I use that with my map viewer? Since I'm actually running it on ArcGIS Online, I need to actually sign on to my ArcGIS Online and then under settings, there is an utility services tab, and I can paste my URL there. Okay. There are a few things I will modify in here. For A4 landscape, I want that output to be a PDF, and I want to include my legend. Now that I have updated it, I need to go back to my map, refresh it, and what I will do also, I will add that now that I refreshed it, my layer is gone. I need to add my layer back. Here again, this is a map service or map image layer. Now if I zoom pan to Australia, and I want to print this page, right? So the first thing you notice that this print button actually is replaced by a list of map only and all available map layout templates option. So this is my A4 landscape that I modified a little bit. So if I choose this guy, then in few seconds, I will actually be getting a PDF with legends and everything. Let's wait. There is my PDF. Now we look at that one. It looks nice, right? And it works. First of all, it works. It did not fail because the map print service is running on my machine now, and it can access all the services and produces a map. So let me actually open this in a separate tab just to show you another enhancement that we made in the last release, actually in the 10.7.1. So now if I zoom into New Zealand area, and again, this is a map service I'm talking about, not a feature layer. Now, if I submit another print task with the same layout, we'll see that the legend will be, in that case, the legend will show a different items. Right? If you look at this one, it has like about 6 legend classes for cities and about 8 or 9 for the soil region, because those are all the regions that we have available in my current extent. But since this map, I'm zoomed into the New Zealand and there are only fewer features available in my map. So now legends actually showing only the features that are available on my map service or in my map, in my current map view. So this is one of the highly requested items from users, and we submitted that. For this, again, you need to have your print service running on 10.7.1 or above, and your map service has to be running again on 10.7.1 or above. Okay, so we got that one. So now what is the next step? Next step would be to have a printout that will actually look like something else, right? It will not be something look like that's out of the box template. It has additional logo and anything so that you can customize, have a layout that's customizable to your need, and that's very conform to your specs and everything. So for that one, I will come back in my next demo to show you how to do that. I'll hand it back to Craig.
All right, thanks, Tanu. So Tanu just showed a lot of the capabilities that are available with the out-of-the-box print service, and tying into some of the ArcGIS server functionality with the dynamic legend case that he showed. But when you want to get into that custom layout template, that's when we'll get into tier 2. We'll talk about that in a second, but we want to talk about a few more remaining things with the out-of-the-box print service before we get there. The first thing we want to talk about is printing cached services. A lot of you may have raster cached services. Those are typically raster tiles that are created at 96 dpi. And if you try to print those at a higher dpi, say 600 dpi, which would be common for, say, a laser printer, you'll see this pixelization that occurs on the left, the image here on the lower left. You can work around this, though, with a raster cached service that has backing data behind it by enabling dynamic layers. If you enable dynamic layers on the map service, then we can print at a higher DPI by doing a export map image request against that service using the dynamic layer capability of the server. Now, to enable dynamic layers, you must have publisher admin privileges to the service, but this is a nice hybrid between having dynamic between having raster tiles that draw quickly in the browser and having high quality prints using dynamic layers on the print service side. It's a nice ability to have kind of a hybrid of those two. Now, just to reiterate, you can register your own print service with ArcGIS Enterprise or your ArcGIS Online organization, and that allows you to print the on-premises services behind a firewall. So in a lot of hybrid use cases where you're using ArcGIS Online, but consuming map services on a server behind your firewall in your organization, you'll want to register a on-premises print service to be able to print those, rather than using the utility print service on ArcGIS Online that can't see those services. All right, and now we'll talk about custom configuration. This is tier 2 of our 3 tiers. And when you do this, you'll publish the Export Web Map tool as your own service. Export Web Map can be found in the Server Tools toolbox under the Printing section. And with this, you can bring your own layout templates. That's when you can introduce your branding with logos or layout design, fonts, design your own content for how your printed layout works. You can choose to make the service asynchronous. You'll primarily make it asynchronous if you're going to do really lengthy prints, very large sheets, for instance. But there's a lot of flexibility here with how you publish that service. There's also the Get Layout Template Info tool in that tool set. Really, this is for retrieving layout template metadata. And this is a relatively new task we've brought together with printing services that allows you to return metadata about your available templates. It's an ArcPy-based script tool. Tanu himself wrote it. And really, this brings forward some of the metadata from your templates to power the web apps and allows you to do some customization of custom text elements and things like that, like this example in Web App Builder. And with that, we'll turn it back over to Tanu for another demo, authoring a layout in Pro, publishing, consuming a print service in Web App Builder.
All right, great. Thanks, Craig. So as I mentioned, and Craig also mentioning that out-of-the-box print service that comes with the server installation, that print service comes with only 8 templates. Those are predefined. That may not satisfy your need. And as you saw before, it might look like one of these. Speaking of this map, there's one thing I wanted to show you is that this is the same world service soils data that I used before, but in my past demo, I actually use a map service. But this particular example, I actually use all the feature layers to show you that when you actually ask for a PDF from this print service these days, then you actually get all the layers as separate layers in the PDF, so that if you want, you can start toggling the visibility of those layers, right? So it only happens when you use feature layer in your web map. Okay, so now get back to my other demo, my custom print service or with my own templates demo. So there are only 2 things you need to do basically in high level. Okay, first one is that you have to prepare a layout and then publish a print service, your own print service with that layout. Okay, so in this particular demo, I actually started with an existing layout that I have been using in my desktop use case. So next, actually there are steps I actually mentioned, put that in this pane on the left side. I use my task manager pane, but I'm not using any of the functionalities, just listing them here. So first thing first is that we need to rename our main map. Since I have more than 1 maps, here is the main map and an overview map in my layout, I need to rename my my main map to web map _ frame. So if I open the property page, it's the name, and I can say web map frame. So it has to be exactly the way I typed in, and it has to match the case as well. It's very case sensitive. So that's my first step. Next step is to add extend indicator, which you saw that I have a little red box here that actually shows the extend indicator. So the way I did that is, let me go open my content pane, and I selected my overview map frame, and then on top there is, from the insert ribbon tab, there is an option called extend indicator. So this is how I actually added that indicator. Option 3, step number 3 is to detach the map from the main map frame. So this is my map frame. If I open the property page, I basically need to make sure that there is no map associated to that one. This is for the performance reason, because this is the map that gets updated by the print service. And if you have some other layers in it, that might, first of all, that layer might get copied on the server, and it will also decrease the performance of your print service. Okay. Now, step number 4, you need to make the title a dynamic. So here is my title, but right now you see the title is a very static title, and I need to make it dynamic so that from my web application, I can change this title to anything I want to. To do that, I will go to my insert menu again, and there is a dynamics text option. And if you scroll down, you'll see that there is a category here called layout. And I will use the metadata tag, the dynamic text from that layout. So I will add that metadata Actually, I'm just adding it outside so that because the metadata has all other metadata, not just the title, all I care about is the title. So if I click on it, now I can copy paste my XML tag. I don't need this one. Now if I go back to my title, static text, I can just paste it. Now, see that now title is pretty much empty right now because I didn't have any empty string for that one. So I just populated that with empty string. All right. Oops, gone somewhere. It's not visible. Where's that go? Oops. Let me redo it. Undo. There's additional lines coming from somewhere. Anyways, all right. Now it looks good. Okay. Step number 5 is that you'll see that on the overview map, and you might have seen that in the main map, is that it is taking a lot of space just to show all those service credits. We have an option to actually move it outside of that map view. The way you do that, again, go back to insert menu, and in my dynamic text drop down, there is a option called service layer credits. So I can add that here, and the moment I added it, it's get removed from as an overlay from those individual maps. I can change that symbol style, text style. Let's make it very, very small, kind of grayish. I can align it to the right and all kind of stuff. And there you go, right now. Okay, that's number. We're almost there. Then what I want to do is I want to add an additional dynamic text element on my map. Okay, so that on the client side, when I'll be using my web application builder, I want to pass in maybe the coordinate that I'm looking at, or I saw something in my map and I want to add that coordinate on my map. Okay, in order to do that, we'll not be using the dynamic text element anymore. I will be using a regular text. I can add that here, but what I will do, I have to name it a certain way. Okay, certain way basically means that you have to have that name of that text embedded within a curly braces. So I can call it coordinates. So as long as you have your name within a set of curly braces, print service will recognize that as a special text element, and the print widget will allow you to pass in any value, and print service will replace that text element with that value that you pass in from the client side. I can have some default value if you want to. I can say just coordinates, etc. I can, if you want, I can symbolize that to any way I want. Let me make that kind of orangish and bold. Apply. There you go. Okay. The last step, now that I'm ready with my layout, the last step is to save it out as a PageX file. Okay. So if you are familiar with the way we do that in back with the print service that you publish from ArcMap, where you actually have to save that as an MXD in a location in a folder. In this case, you don't save that project. You simply export this layout out as a PageX file. So the way you will do that, you go back to the Share tab, and there's an option called Save it as a layout file. So I saved that as a layout file in my template folder. Okay, and you saw that I already created that, so save the time and everything. So I'm done. Now I have to publish my own print service. Publishing own print service is actually very simple. All you have to do is to go to Geoprocessing tab. You can search by keyword like print web map, and you can see that there is an option shows up, export web map tool. If you want to locate that, as Craig mentioned in his demo, it is inside server tools, printing tool set, right? And all I have to do is to open it. I have to select that folder where I have saved my PageX or layout file, and that's it. Now you see that this dropdown is populated with that template, because in that folder I have only one template. All I have to do is now to run it. And Craig mentioned earlier that there is another task, and I showed you in my previous demo. It's called get layout templates. So this is the one, and you need that because you need the client needs to know all the additional things that you did, like you made that title dynamic and you had that additional dynamic text elements. Client application needs to know that. So this is the task that will allow client application to get that information. So again, all I have to do is to select exactly the same folder that I picked in my export web map tool. I'm running it. Here's the result. I can open my geoprocessing history tab, and then all I have to do is that publish it as a geoprocessing service. So if you are connected to a portal, you can just right click and you can say I want to share that out as a web tool. But in my case, I actually am connected to a standalone server. Craig mentioned that that's kind of newish. That you can actually, from ArcGIS Pro right now, you can directly publish a map or feature service or geoprocessing service directly to a server. So here is the connection I have to my server. And for publishing a geoprocessing service, which print service is a geoprocessing service, you need to have a connection, a type of administrator connection. Now you can right click and say I want to publish my geoprocessing service. I will pick my export web map geoprocessing result. Once I have it, then in my case, I can name that to like print report something, whatever I want to do. And then usually you need to, since most of the time, I will recommend you to use the synchronous execution mode, unless you have a really large printout that you want to have from your print task, and it might take a couple of minutes. In that case, you should use async. Error message level is good. Some cases you may want to have info for debugging purpose. And then what I will do, I need to add my other geoprocessing result for get layout templates. So once I'm done, I can analyze it. And I see there was no error because my folder where I have my templates is already registered to my data store. So I'm all good to go. I can click to publish and publish that. So I already did that. Let me go and show you how it looks like. So here is my print service that I published. And if you look at the parameter list, it's exactly matched with the out-of-the-box print service. There's nothing new. Now, how can I use that? So again, just copy the URL. And this time, I will be using a web application builder, not ArcGIS Online or just a map viewer. So in order to add a print button or task, you can add that in the widget. I can search for print option. Here it is. Click OK. I have to, by default, it points to the print service that is already associated with my organization when I loaded this application very first time. I replaced it, clicked it. Now I see that I have my print button. If I click on it, I see that it has this layout options available. I can choose PNG 8. And if I click on advanced, you'll see that this is the custom text element that I actually added to my layout. So that comes along here. And what I want to do in that one is that I want to get the coordinates from this location, from this widget, and I copy it and I will paste it here. Right? So I'm all set. I want to print it out now. So if I click on print and we'll wait for a few seconds, then we should get the result back as expected. There you go. This is my PNG I got back from there. It looks like, see that now it looks like exactly what I authored from ArcGIS Pro. And right here, you see that my dynamic text elements with a value of that my dynamic text elements replaced by the coordinates that I passed from the client. You see that this is the extend indicator, and here's the service layer credits and all kind of stuffs. And you see that the title is updated based on whatever the title I have on the client side. All right. So with that, back to you, Craig.
All right. Thanks, Tanu. All right. Just to recap these custom print services, and primarily what you're doing here is you're working with your layout templates, and what Tanu was able to show there is a lot of the custom behavior you can configure just by using ArcGIS Pro and how you name elements, how you configure the elements, and have those presented up through the layout template metadata to the applications, and how you can get a lot of custom behavior without ever writing really a line of code at all. A few things to keep in mind with layout templates. Generally, you want to remove all existing layers. In some cases, like the example he had, you might have an overview map. That's okay. There are some cases with advanced printing we'll get into in a bit where you might want to actually leave more layers in there. But for general custom print service scenarios, you really want an empty map. Another thing we get asked quite a bit is whether or not existing templates can be updated when you publish the map service. And if you register the template folder to the data store, you can update existing templates without republishing. You can't add new templates, but you can update the existing ones. And that's a nice pro tip there for those of you who might be changing your templates over time and not necessarily wanting to tear down a service and republish it. All right, now we'll talk about advanced print services using ArcPy. Why ArcPy? Well, really because it supports a lot of advanced use cases. If you want to do vector output, a lot of times people will swap services out. They'll swap a map service out or a tiled image service out for local vector data. Sometimes people want to do some printing of sort of pop-up style metadata, or they want to do multiple page output with legal documents, add reports, pictures, driving directions, things like that. The custom print workflows through arcpy.mp are really powered by this convert web map to ArcGIS project method that's part of arcpy.mp. And what this takes in is the web map JSON, and then there's actually optional params. The template PageX, in most cases you'll be using a template, the map frame name, and then you can specify optionally a location for the geodatabase where some objects like notes get added when they're printed. Once the web map is converted to a map in the ArcGIS Pro project, you really have the full capabilities of arcpy.mp on the map. That allows you to modify the content. That includes adding content or exporting using custom options. The out-of-the-box print service essentially uses a set of hard-coded settings on the export types. But if you want to get into some of the nuanced export properties, you can really do that with an arcpy.mp workflow. And we really encourage you to see the arcpy.mp help for examples. There's numerous examples of how to use these various APIs in arcpy.mp to manipulate your map and do custom exports and things like that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanu, who's going to show like supercharged arcpy.mp for sort of reporting workflows, which is a lot of times what people are doing with customization through Python.
Luckily, even though it's supercharged, it doesn't require much of a coding these days. In the past, just like a couple of releases ago, it would have taken you a lot of codes. But now that we have reporting support in ArcGIS Pro, it's pretty easy. Okay, before I get to that one, I forgot to mention this link in my last demo. So this is what the help link that actually talks you through or helps you. It's a tutorial basically, helps you through to how to create that layout and publish a print service with your custom layouts. And you see that at the here is that option that talks about how to name that main map frame. Map frame, and then here is the all the XML tags that you can use to add a title text, author text, copyright text, etc. Another thing is to show you is that how that JSON that we have been talking about, how does the JSON look like? We keep mentioning that one print task or the JavaScript print task or any other client print task does not actually does the print by itself. It actually converts or serializes the current state of your web map into a JSON and hands that over to a print service. Print service uses that JSON to reconstruct the map in its memory, converts that to PDF or PNG, whatever you ask, and sends that back to you. So at high level, actually that web map as JSON has 4 elements: map options, operational layer, export options, and layout options. If I look at the layout options, you see that here's the title that we talked about, right? And then it has the legend. With I added a legend in that one, it would have been there. Okay, and here is the text element. Remember the text element that I passed in? So this is being passed along to that print service. Export option, and when you ask for the map only, then this output size gets used. Otherwise, the DPI is, that's what you mentioned, how detail the output that you want back from the print service. Map options is basically shows, hey, what is the extent that I was viewing at, the spatial reference, the scale, if I want to stick to that specific scale. And then operational layer is the one that says what are the layers that is part of this map. In my last example, I had 4 layers, including some map service. You see that one, this is the a layer or feature layer of a map service, and all of this stuff. And we have this vector tile layer, I believe. Right. Okay, so let's get back to my demo. So if I go back to my web map, so here's the web map. What I want to do is that, you see, if I click on one of the features, it has some attributes, you see, and it also has some attachments. So just in addition to print out this map, which we were able to do before, I want to add those attributes for my selected features as well as the attachments. Okay. To do that, I have to author a report to begin with. So here is the list of the tasks that I have for me as a reminder. So again, at the high level, 2 things you have to do is to generate a report file, which is .rptx file from ArcGIS Pro, and then you have to publish your print service with that, or to publish a print service using an arcpy script, and then the rest of the things are exactly the same as what we did before. Okay, what are the steps to create a report? Report got introduced just like a couple of releases ago, right, Craig?
Yep.
Okay, so in order to do that, go to that insert menu. There is a report option. I can say, okay, let me go back and select my layer on my table of contents. I have that, clicked on it. So here's my report name. But I want to, next, I just want to only include my selected features. I don't want to see our object IDs or shape area or shape fields in my report. I can skip this guy now for this my case, and I want to print actually 1 feature per page. So I will use that template, and I can choose my styling, and I can click finish. So it creates a report right away, right? I can click my details section. If you see on the content pane, here is the details section that has all the name of the fields on the left side and the reference to that field with the curly braces. Okay, now I'd like to add, since I want to add, show my attached images, what I need to do now is to enhance this area and insert an attachment elements inside the details section. Okay, first of all, I need to modify the height of the details section, let's say to 6 inches. Then I will go back to my insert menu and attachment. I will add an attachment element right here. Okay. In my example, I actually have only 1 attachment per feature, but in some cases you may have more than 1 features, 1 attachments. In that case, what you can do, you can right click on that element, attachment elements, and on that placement tab, you can actually define how many rows and how many columns you want to have, and what is the spacing between those. But since I have only 1, I'll just live with that. So I'm done with creating a report, right? Next, I have to do same as before with my layout template. I have to save that out as a report file. So from share tab, I'll just go and in this case, I will save in that same location where I had my PageX file saved before, and I actually have the report file saved already. Okay. Next step is to create an arcpy based printing tool to begin with, and then publish that as a print service. So in case you missed it, If I go back to my export web map tool, you notice that our export web map and get layout info tools that we have here, those are ArcPy script tool, right? So the easy way to start is to actually copy this guy and start working from there. Okay. In order to copy that, I will actually copy my server toolbox to begin with, and the server toolbox is actually lives here in ArcGIS program files, ArcGIS Pro, resources, ArcGIS toolbox. So I'll go to my ArcGIS toolbox, and here is the server tools, and I will actually copy that in my staging folder right here, and then I will copy those scripts. And if you want to know where those scripts are pointing to, I can right click on my property page. Oops. Okay, you see that where those scripts files are. If I go back to my toolbox and is the scripts, I can open my staging right there. So now here is my export web map Python tool. I'll copy and paste it here, and then get layout templates info Python tool, Python file, copy paste. There you go. Now I go back to my ArcGIS Pro, my catalog, in the staging folder. I will create, if I refresh it, you will see that it is this is the server toolbox. I need to create my own toolbox now. I can call it my print. Now, the easy thing is to do is to now copy them from this toolbox and paste it. So with that, you will actually get all those additional parameters the way you want it to be, to match or conform to our out-of-the-box print service. And that way, you can use that with JavaScript API print task or web application builder print widget right out of the bat. You don't have to do anything. Now, one thing is that right now they are copied, but they are not pointing to the right Python file. So I have to open the property page, and then I will change the path. And here's that. I will be fixing my path for both of my tools. There you go. So I'm almost there. If I now open or edit my right click and edit, then you can see that it opens that Python code, right? And in this Python code, I will actually insert my code that will actually do that, actually export that export report as well. So what I will do, I copy that from my already saved Python file, right on top of my main module. It could go anywhere. And then I have to make some changes in my main module as well. It's only a few lines of changes. It basically says when the format is PDF, right? Great that you exported that out as a layout, and then call this export report function and get a PDF and march that with that output coming from export layout, and that's it. If it is not a PDF, then add a warning. That's all I'm doing here. I can save it out. I'm done. And now the rest of the things are exactly the same I did before. I open my export web map tool. In this case, it's actually my own tool that is pointing to a modified ArcGIS export. Modified export web map Python file. And I will point to my template folder, and that's it. Run it, and I'm all set, right? So I already did that. Let me show you how can I use it. So here is an example of my of my web application, and you see that there's the same print widget that I showed you in my previous example. So first of all, I have to make some selection. Let me select those features, and these are the features that I want to be included in my report, right? I'll click on that print widget. I want to switch that to PDF now, and then I'll click PDF. Right, so it's going to take a little time. So in the meantime, let me go and show you the code itself. Right, so here's a code that I actually copy pasted. You see the first few lines is basically all it's doing is getting a reference for the map and the layer from that map. and just pointing to constructing a path to my report file. Step number 1 after that is just initialization. The first one, you just import that report doc into the project that the print service is created in the memory. Then you get a reference to your report. Step 2, is to set the reference of the report to that layer, right? And step number 3 is I'm just generating an unique file name with the PDF extension and exporting that to a PDF. Once I have that PDF, I need to merge it with that PDF that was generated by export layout call, right? So it makes basically the Python file is doing 2 things. If it is a layout, it says, hey, export the layout to PDF. Then it passes to this export report function, which is actually generating the report and appending to that report PDF into that layout, the PDF that generated by the export layout function. And that's it. And then save it, close it, and we're done. So here it is. In the meantime, it's done. If I open my report, you see that now the map looks exactly the same that I had before. But if I start scrolling, now you'll see that it shows all the attributes for those selected features. And the first one doesn't have any attachment. That's why the attachment portion is blank. But the next one has the attachment. So it is actually including the attachments there. Right? Okay, so cool. And then this attachment option is just introduced recently with ArcGIS Pro 2.5, and you need ArcGIS Enterprise 10.8 in order to take advantage of this attachment. And if you want to know more about how to generate this report and get a hold of this the Python code, then we have this blog post that's written that actually points to a shared file, a zip file, which you can download and start working with that one. With this, back to you, Craig.
All right, thanks, Tanu. Just a note that post he just showed, the blog post, we have the URL for that later in this presentation if you didn't get a chance to write that down. All right, so now we're going to move on to talking about client APIs briefly. And these are, what APIs you use along with the print service. So we've primarily demoed through ArcGIS Online and Web App Builder, but really what that's using is capabilities that are built into the JavaScript API. So in the 4x API, you're using the print widget. If you're still using the 3x API, it's a print digit. That's just the Dojo widgets. If you're using ArcGIS Runtime SDK for Java, look at the printer job. In the .NET SDK, it's the print task. So with whichever API you're working with, look at developers.arcgis.com to find the info on printing capabilities in that API. If you're using something like Web App Builder, you're seeing that functionality already built in. Same with Experience Builder, I believe, although I don't have much experience with it.
I believe it's probably there by now, or they're working on it.
Yeah, it's in progress if it's not there already. All right. Now we've gotten all the way through this presentation and we didn't actually print anything. I'm a little bit old school. I like to see things printed on paper for it to be called printing. And that's just a reminder that printing services are generally about generating printable documents, PDFs, generally. But a few times we get requests from people who want to actually send output to a physical printer automatically as part of the print service. And if you want to do that, then there's a few things we'd recommend. One, use the arcpy.mp workflow, and then how you actually get the print to the physical printer depends a bit on what you're using for a physical printer. If you just have a local printer, say a large format printer, parked on your hallway in your office, chances are you might be able to just copy the PDF to that printer's address on your local, say, Windows network, sort of an Xcopy workflow, and it will pick up that PDF and print it. Obviously, that's something you want to test, but a lot of these printers have onboard capabilities for handling PDFs directly these days, and they'll be able to do that, and you could have that work automatically. The other approach is cloud printing workflows. In the past, I pointed people towards Google Cloud Print. Google Cloud Print actually still exists, but has been deprecated and is going to disappear by the end of 2020. Interestingly, Microsoft has announced Azure Universal Print, which is essentially a replacement for Google Cloud Print workflows, but in the Azure world. And really what this is about is driverless printing. That's sort of the term for it. You register your printer with the cloud, and it sort of listens for print events. And if you want to print to it, there's a little API where you authenticate with the service and then just pass your document up to there, and then it'll come out on the correct printer. Azure Universal Print hasn't been launched yet, but it's coming soon if that's something that interests you. All right, just a recap of printing services. They're really powered by web maps. That's the consistent format produced by all our web APIs, and it's a JSON spec. And then once you have that JSON, we can pass that into a print service, and that can be the out-of-the-box tool, a custom configuration of the out-of-the-box tool, or an arcpy.mp approach. And the nice thing with geoprocessing tools, and they're called geoprocessing tasks once you publish them as services, is that as long as your version of that service mimics the print service API, you can do essentially whatever you want behind the scenes, but to client applications, it still looks like a print service. So that's what Tanu was really showing with, his custom application that was mixing reports and layouts in there. He was presenting the tool using the standard print API. So an application doesn't know any different about what it's doing behind the scenes, but you have full control over what it does, in your Python code. Okay, a few help links. I'll just leave these up here for a second, but printing in a web application, share your ArcPy script as a web tool. Those are both help topics in the ArcGIS help that really can recap a lot of the things we've talked about in this session with some copy-paste examples you can use to jumpstart your activities. And then that blog post that Tanu just showed on printing reports, the URL is there. We have just a few minutes, so I'm actually going to bounce out to the web browser and show these. So here's printing and web applications. This talks about the printing tool services, the get layout template info, etc., how legends work. And really there's a lot of nice information in here. And then for web printing with arcpy.mp, this is really the arcpy.mp approach, the methods you need, convert web map to ArcGIS project that we had an overview of, and how you share that as a tool. These parameters you need to have for the rest of the applications to recognize this as a print service that Tanu showed in his demonstration configuring. And then finally, this blog post that Tanu and Scott put together that covers this whole reporting workflow. And then you said there's some downloadables referenced from here as well, right?
Mm-hmm. It's actually in the middle
here.
there.
Right here, I found it. So there's some examples throughout this. And with that, that's really the end of our presentation. So thank you very much for sticking around this long on the video.